Happy March, everyone, and welcome to the March 1, 2023 meetings of the Lower Merion Board of Commissioners. We have 4 committee meetings this evening. We have the Parks and Rec Committee, Public Works, Finance, and Building and Planning Committee. Before we start, a couple of announcements. One, please silence your cell phones. Equipment for the hearing impaired is available if needed. When the floor is open for public comment, please note that comment will first be taken from those present in the room, and if you do, please use that microphone over there, and then from those attending virtually. For those on Zoom, please raise your virtual hand if you'd like to speak during public comment so that our Township Secretary can identify you. And for all members of the public speaking, please introduce yourself prior to beginning your comments. Also, if you're making comments this evening, and at all of our meetings, please be aware that the board and when appropriate staff will respond to comments and questions after all of the public comment is finished. So it's not a back and forth. Don't expect comments immediately. It'll happen after all of the comments come in. With that said, I'll call on Commissioner Whalen, the chair of the Parks and Rec Committee, to kick off that meeting.
Thank you, Acting President India.
Thank you, Acting Chairperson.
We have 2 items on the agenda tonight for Parks and Rec. I will kick off the first one and make a motion started to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of a waiver of Township Code Section 111-4.2 as requested by the Parks and Recreation Department and Rising Sun Presence to permit patrons to possess open containers with alcoholic beverages and serve alcoholic beverages in public rights of way within a regulated area at the Bryn Mawr Gazebo, 9 South Bryn Mawr Avenue, Bryn Mawr, during Bryn Mawr Twilight concerts. And for an update, do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner McKeon. And Director Donna Heller, please take it away.
Thank you, Commissioner. The Bryn Mawr Twilight Concert Series has been a financially self-sustaining program operating since 2007. It began with David Broida, a local resident, who grassrooted the program and raised funds to get it off the ground. And last year was the first year with Rising Suns Presents taking over the reins for the concert series. They also have an association with the Ardmore Music Hall that has a Montgomery County liquor license in good standing, and they've operated bar service and other community outdoor events, including a number of events here, as well as the Upper Merion Concert Series and Wayne Music Festival. They've received no complaints from the township that they've organized for, neighbors, or health issues or safety issues. The sales would be limited to beer and wine. Pricing would be comparable to the pricing that is associated with Upper Merion's concerts as well as Ardmore Music Halls. Sales would be in the form of a single location on the site and limited to only those that are in attendance to the concert. And the attendees would still be allowed to continue to bring their coolers and outside food and drink to the venue. And we'd be happy to answer any questions. Representatives from Rising Sun Presents is also here if you have any specifics I cannot address.
Thank you, Director Heller. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments? Seeing none, do any members of the public have any questions or comments? I don't see anyone online. Jody, right?
Just one person, and their hand is not raised.
All right.
It's probably George Manos.
I will lament with the obligatory Commissioner Zeloff comment about anything in Bryn Mawr that this is a wonderful event and we should all be supporting it, and it's been going on for an exceptionally longer time than I've been alive, and all the people are amazing and wonderful and do fantastic works, and I look forward to being there, and everyone else on this dais should come with me. So with that said, I support the motion, obviously. All in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Any abstain? Caught you, fish out of water. Jody, that passes unanimously with 1 abstention.
Yep, thank you.
All right, on to the second item. Commissioner Stevenson will be leading us on this one, right, Commissioner?
Excuse me. I just want to say thank you very much. I appreciate
of course.
it.
Thank you very much, and I'm being glib, but I do appreciate it, and I look forward to having you.
That was David Broida. from however.
All right. Agenda item number 2, I will begin by recommending to the Board of Commissioners the adoption of a resolution authorizing the submission of the application and business plan for the Redevelopment Assistance Capital Program Grant for the Ardmore Community Center Palm Senior Center Replacement Renovation. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Kramer. With that, I'll turn this also over to Director Heller.
The township was notified in October that we were receiving a $2 million grant award to fund the Ardmore Avenue Community Center and Palm Center replacement and renovation project. Resolutions required to authorize the submission of the official application and business plan for the grant. So this is the resolution that we're requesting, so we can include that in the official application and business plan.
Terrific. Do any commissioners have any comments or questions? We'll do them both together. Commissioner Stevenson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to thank Donna for bringing this forward. I think this is a part of the work that we're moving to do the revitalization of both of those projects. And I would also like to thank Donna and her team through this process. One of the things that's been happening as we looking at renovation and changes, her ability to have these constant conversations. We most recently had a conversation with neighbors about making some changes. So I think it's important to know that while we're looking to make these improvements, we're keeping in mind the neighbors and the needs. So thank you, Donna, and thank you for your team.
Thank you.
For this work.
Commissioner Stevenson, you all done?
Yes, sir, I'm done.
Commissioner Bernhardt.
I'm saving the rest for the building plan.
This is the Parks and Recreation Committee. I think Commissioner Went is really into the recreation part here this evening. So, but Donna, I had mentioned, first of all, I support this. I think it's fantastic. And I mentioned this in an email to you earlier today. And in fact, we've had a couple emails. Part of this grant goes to the concept of playgrounds. And recently there was a young mother that wrote to us about some difficulties that her child, who has some special needs, had at the Gladwin Park playground. It caused me to go out there and actually take a look. And it may be a little bit tired, but as you pointed out, it is ADA, compliant. And I noted that the sawdust ground is there, which is somewhat standard. But you go elsewhere and you see different type of soft landings. I'm not sure what the nomenclature is for those type of things in the parks. And you see that this really could use an upgrade. And we had an exchange of emails about that. And I bring that up in connection with this, in that this is a grant. We also have pending use of the ARP funds. And right within the sweet spot of the ARP funds would be something that for some of our playgrounds. And Gladwin is not the only one that could utilize some uplifting. And so I presented that by asking you, saying, maybe you can get out to the commissioners so they would know what the various costs would be of the parks, not just Gladwin, that could utilize some upgrading, because that's something that many of the community members, and not just those who have children with special needs, but I know others from being out there, at the risk of sounding politically incorrect, because I'm sure it's dads, but it was moms who I spoke to, said that they will go over to Astrid Park over Gladwin because of one being a little bit nicer than the others. So you can have your staff pull together to educate the commissioners, so when it comes time to taking a look at the next available money for parks, we might be able to put this in the hopper of evaluations. I'd appreciate that, and that's my long-winded way of saying I really support this, and that concept should spread elsewhere. Thank you.
I will jump in, Director Heller, and just say, Commissioner Bernheim, I'm glad that you brought this up. It's extremely timely. I wholeheartedly support it. I assume we'll be working closely together. Director Heller and I have already been putting together quite an ambitious proposal, I would say, for when we talk about ARP funds and the status of our playgrounds. Maybe a little bit more ambitious than Director Heller wants me to be. So I look forward to bringing that forward at the appropriate time as the head of Parks and Rec, but anyone else have any comments or questions? All right. Any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none. Online, still nobody?
No.
All right. With that, I will take the vote. All in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? It passes unanimously. And with that, Commissioner Govern, we are done.
Thank you, Commissioner Whalen. We'll now turn it over to Commissioner Whalen, who is the acting chair of the Finance Committee.
And
The floor is now yours.
We will keep the recreation going. All right, so again, I am but a paltry substitute for Mr. Zoloff in my comments here. I am going to chair the Finance Committee tonight. Again, we only have 2 items on the agenda, and I will begin by making a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to award a contract for BALA CYNWYD Library exterior finishes to the following bidder in accordance with the bids received on Tuesday, February 14th, 2023 at 11 a.m. prevailing time, and the recommendation of the Chief Financial Officer with the approval of the Director of Public Works, Director of Libraries, and Township Engineer. And that is a payment of total lump sum bid $53,475.00 to Donald E. Reisinger, Inc. And for this, I'll turn this over to our Director of...
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Oh, yes. One second. Commissioner Bernheim.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Whalen. So yes, we have 3 bids on this item. The low bidder is a known bidder, quality vendor who's done good work for the township in the past, so that's good from our perspective. While it is above budget, when you get 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bids, this really is what the market is right now. It is roughly $10,000 cheaper than the second lowest bidder, so I'll take that as a slight win to blunt the pain a little bit. This CIP project does have a small buffer, about $40,000 to $50,000 to account for emergencies, so there's a little bit of play within the budget. So the overall amount is not a major concern, so we recommend going forward.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the commissioners? Commissioner McComb.
Thank you, Commissioner Whalen. Eric, just for my edification, when was the renovation work completed on the BALA Library? Was that within 10 years or was it more than 10 years?
I've been here almost 8, and it was before I got here. So
Okay.
I would say it's probably right around 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I support this, and obviously the work needs to be done. But just
McElhaney might know exactly when it was.
for my edification, I was just wondering what sort of useful life and paint surfaces and coatings.
Well, at the time that the library was renovated, this was not part of that scope of work. And if you remember, when COVID struck, we had cut the CIP in half. This project's been deferred numerous years, and we finally were able to get it back into the cycle. So, again, it was not part of the original scope at the BALA Library. Most of that work was interior work and dividing it into a separate entity from the French school. This is exterior work.
Okay, that clears it up. I just want to make sure that we're getting our useful life out of our finishes. Thank you.
Yes. Commissioner Kramer.
I have had many, many complaints about the condition from residents in my ward who face the part of the library that has been in need of this work. And I am sure that they will be very happy that this is finally getting done.
Any other commissioners? Seeing none. Anyone from the public have any comments or questions? Seeing none. Nobody online, Jody? All right. Then all those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none. Jody, it passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Traub. All right, then the second item for consideration today, I will move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the eligibility list for volunteer firefighters and volunteer emergency medical service personnel who have qualified for the real estate tax credit for firefighter/ambulance volunteers. Do I have a second? Commissioner McKeon. Trout.
So this is a annual March item where we approve volunteers for the tax credit. You have the list that's within your packet. Last year, we had 42 eligible. This year, we have 45, so it's nice to see that number increasing. The overall dollar amount will actually decrease a little bit this year just based upon the composition of those volunteers and, the homes that they own and the taxes that they paid. This is another part of our effort to try to recruit and retain those valuable volunteer fire and EMS personnel. This is the second year that the tax credit has been at 100% of the township taxes, and we recommend moving forward.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions? Commissioner Burnham.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Whalen. This is the second time that we are doing this, and we are doing it at 100%. And I think it's important to note that in order to qualify, there are certain criteria that the firefighters and volunteer folks from the ambulance service need to meet. In reference to the fire department, they have to start out at being firefighter 1, which is 180 hours of training, which all by itself for anybody is really a very taxing situation. And I won't make a pun then on tax credits, I promise. But seriously, it is very demanding for somebody to be able to do that. And there are other criteria regarding being there for response times, for other drills, doing work within the fire stations, such that they have to reach a certain point value, which is why we have the number that we have here. Those are the ones that have qualified for this. And whatever we can do to assist in the recruitment and the retention of our volunteer fire service, or the volunteers, which are the backbone of our service, we ought to do that. And I've reported on a number of occasions here, and on more occasions that I'd like to acknowledge within the Lower Merion Board of Directors of the Fire Department, that I've been after the school to join us in doing this. And that the school on a number of occasions has had this on their agenda, and for one reason or another, due to certain conflicts, they had to remove it. It is now on their business agenda in April. And I have received the previous endorsement from their past superintendent. I haven't had an opportunity to speak to the current superintendent, but also to members of the school board who also are in favor of this. Hopefully, when they analyze this, they will see that they can do this at 100%. Doing the back of the napkin cost here, if it's going to be less than $40,000 for us, it'd be less than $320,000 for the school district. It's a small percentage given the nature of their budget. It is not money out of their pocket, but it is something that helps our volunteer fire service. So I hope that they will follow our lead in doing this because it is an excellent thing that we're able to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Burnham. Any other commissioners have any questions or comments? Seeing none? Oh, no, I'm getting there. Thanks, though.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
He's a member of the public.
Yeah.
You get your own stage. Thank you. Any members of the public who have questions or comments?
Thank you. Joseph Abramson. Just a quick thing. So I know that we started this a few years ago, and the numbers are going up. But do we have any metrics on response times, on people availability, from the fire department or ambulance? Is it helping? Obviously we assume it's helping. We have now 45 people. Last year was 42. The year before was less. But what are the response times to a fire or EMS call? What are the availability of people? Like, do we have actual concrete numbers that it's working? But other than that, yeah, I support this and it's really good. So thanks.
Be glad to answer that.
Thank you very much. I was just about to ask if anyone had the knowledge.
Right, even to our manager. There are statistics for that, as for each and every incident, the response time of how long it takes for the fire service to get there, the number of people that get there. And you have to keep in mind the other thing that I keep saying about the fire service. 1/2 of the calls that come out are false. So each and every time that bell rings, be it leaving your job at 2 in the morning or getting out of your bed, or 2 in the afternoon or getting out of your bed 2 in the morning, many of the folks have got to recognize it's for naught, but they do it. So if we're able to encourage and be able to keep people here by this minor assistance, and it is minor, it's helpful. But we have those statistics on those times.
Thank you, Commissioner Burnham. Seeing no other comments or questions from the public, Jody, anybody online?
No.
Okay, thank you. In that case, all those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, Jody, it passes unanimously. And with that, Commissioner Gavin, we are done.
Thank you, Commissioner Whalen. If it's okay with you, we'll have someone else chair a meeting.
I was thinking of taking building and planning, but Josh just bolted,
Well,
so.
in the interim, we'll have Commissioner McKeon chair the Public Works Committee.
Thank you. Vice President Gavin, there are 2 items on the agenda for the Public Works Committee tonight. Agenda item number 1 is an authorization to advertise an ordinance for Sycamore Avenue deed or for dedication. And to start things off, I will make a motion and move to consider for recommendation to the Board of Commissioners authorizing the Township Secretary to advertise notice of intent to adopt an ordinance to amend Chapter A171 Street Ordinances by accepting a deed of dedication for a portion of Sycamore Avenue, 40 feet wide, extending from Valley Road to Calvert Road, the distance of approximately 213 feet in the Township of Lower Merion. The second, thank you, Commissioner Stevenson. And with that, I will turn things over to our Public Works Director, Paul McElhinney, for a presentation. And I will note that the briefing memo states this is the final step in what is now a several-year process for the Board of Commissioners.
Good evening, correct. You're familiar with this project. We had worked diligently with the neighbors. They went through the engineering stage and found out what they needed to do to bring the road up to township standards. We worked with them, the engineer, their contractor. We received the road and approved it that it met our standards. And as noted by the commissioner, we are at the last stage. This is the advertisement so that the board can adopt the road and it will become part of our public roadway system and be maintained by the township in perpetuity.
Thank you. With that, any commissioner questions or comments? Okay. Is there any public comment in the room? And Jody, any public comment online?
Yep.
Okay. All right. With that, I'll take it to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And any opposed? Okay. The motion passes unanimously. And that will bring us to our second and final item for the evening. This is an approval of an amendment to wastewater services agreement with the Philadelphia Water Department to add a connection point at Cardinal Avenue. And I will move to consider for recommendation to the Board of Commissioners approval of a minor amendment to the 1992 Water Services Agreement between the Philadelphia Water Department and the Township of Lower Merion to add a new connection power point at Cardinal Avenue. The second, thank you, Commissioner McComb. And Director McElhinney, if you can give a brief presentation, please.
A brief presentation. St. Joe's came forward with putting in a pedestrian tunnel from the Lower Merion campus over to the Philadelphia campus, just north of the walk bridge that you're familiar with. In doing so, one of the issues that was encountered was the sewer line. So we worked with the Philadelphia Water Department, their engineer, to assure that the change in location of where the flow went would not cause an issue for the city for treating that wastewater. And essentially, anytime we make a change by adding a connection point, we need to amend our agreement, which we are doing here. We're not increasing any flow to the city of Philadelphia. We're just taking it from one point and redirecting it to another so that they can continue with building their tunnel.
Thank you. Any commissioner questions or comments? Okay. Any public comment in the room? Nope. Shocking. Okay, Jody, any public comment online? All right. Okay, well, that'll take it to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All right. Any opposed? So, Madam Secretary, that too passes unanimously. And Vice President Gavin, that concludes the business of the Public Works Committee.
Great, thank you very much. Nice to have one of our committees done well tonight so far, and I'm sure we'll have a second one done well. Commissioner Grimes, Building and Planning, thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice President Gavin. So, we have 3 items on the agenda, but the first one, which is a discussion of the code amendment for our noise and exterior lighting relating to recreation and sports lighting. At the request, these are discussion items, the first 2, but at the request of the Lower Merion School District, we are going to defer the conversation about recreation and sports lighting and not have that tonight. So we're going to move on to item 2, which is a discussion of amendments to the noise and exterior lighting code for pertaining to the noise amendments. And as soon as he's ready, I will ask our Director of Building and Planning to lead that conversation. Again, this is for discussion only. There's not going to be any vote on this tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner Grimes.
Sure.
Call up my PowerPoint real quick. The Building and Planning Committee has seen the lighting ordinance recently in the last month or in the last year, and there's been a lot of discussion that's been moving through the public. So there's a couple things that I'm bringing for everybody tonight. One of them, and they're interrelated. There's 3 items that were originally on the agenda tonight, but really only 2 we're going to focus on. The 2 we're going to focus on are chapters 105, noise and exterior lighting. Previously, we had brought forward exterior lighting. The Building and Planning Committee had reviewed this at the end of last summer, had made some suggestions. We brought back those edits. And also, at that same time, we were developing complementary revisions to the noise ordinance, the other part of Chapter 105. Well, we brought those together, and we thought we'd bring them together at the same time to you this evening. And if you don't mind, I'll take you through the noise ordinance pieces first, and then I'll take you through the lighting. The noise ordinance is a little bit more direct. So Chapter 105, it's not zoning code, it's it's the noise and exterior lighting ordinance. This is an ordinance that's really one of the key parts of our nuisance ordinances. These are things that really can have externalities, it can bother neighbors, it can bother people who live near commercial properties and such. The noise ordinance was old, it was simple, it needed to be updated and refined. So we've made a series of changes to make it easier to enforce and just more applicable with technology. The first thing that we did is we refined the definition of excessive noise. We took out some language that was extraneous relating to annoyance, things that you really couldn't measure. We wanted to make sure if there was a noise violation, you could distinctly measure that violation and then enforce it. So this will make it a lot easier to enforce. The next is that we clarified the maximum permissible sound levels, and we distinguish them between residential and commercial properties. So we have different levels, so you can have a little bit more noise on a commercial property, less on a residential property, and also specifying where those measurements for violations need to be measured from, the locations. Once again, we get more into the locations of this, and this is all very clear. It makes it very much easier for our inspectors to enforce this when they're out in the field. Also, we've included a number of new exemptions. The ordinance has a number of them. We're adding some additional ones that relate to residential mechanical equipment, if it's not operating higher than 72 decibels, commercial mechanical equipment that is operating normally and is located at a roof level but is screened, noise created by life safety equipment, reasonable animal sounds, exempting animal hospitals, zoos, and then aircraft and railway transportation. These are just normal things that one would do to a noise ordinance. It was a long time coming. It needed to be updated. We're also treating the time when we're enforcing these for the exemptions. There's always been an exception differing between residential and commercial properties. One was 6 a.m. and trash trucks would come out at 6 a.m. And this was always a bugaboo for people who live near commercial properties. We're treating it all at 7 o'clock. We're moving everything to 7 o'clock. That seems to be the reasonable time for the construction noise and refuse to move forward. It just to be a lot clearer. We're also updating the violations and penalties, making this a lot clearer for everybody. And if we have to go out numerous times, we're now able to have a re-inspection fee for nuisance properties when we're inspecting a nuisance, in addition to the regular fines that our inspectors can impose. I'm happy to answer any of your questions. This really does help to modernize our ordinance. These are simple changes. Many of them were recommended by our building director, Ernest Pendleton. Ernest has been, I can't compliment him enough in his ability to come in and be very practical about enforcement. And one of our real goals, and we know this is a priority of the board, is enforcement. Enforcement just isn't putting more people on the street, it's making sure our codes are easy to interpret and we're actually enforcing what we want to enforce. So Ernest had a lot of input on this, and I really want to thank him for his contributions.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to start with 2 questions. The first on the Section 13 amendment, I guess maybe I should wait to see if you can pull it up, or just take a second. So Section 13, it says animal sounds provided the noise results in at less than 5 expressions of sound. Should that be at least?
Should that be, excuse me?
It says Section 13 about animal sounds, says animal sounds provided the noise results in at less than 5 expressions of sound. Should that possibly be at least, or am I not reading it correctly?
No, I think we wanted less. We don't want to, we're trying to prohibit very angry dogs. I think that's it. You're trying to have, if a dog is reasonably barking, we're not going to enforce it. We're trying to be able to enforce an unreasonable dog.
Well, I can discuss it with you offline. I'm not sure it reads real clear.
I'm happy to have that conversation.
The second just general comment, and we've discussed this separately, I'm concerned that the average resident knows what's permitted and knows what's not permitted. And I think that the current ordinance, unamended, has some challenges. And I think everybody knows a gas leaf blower at 6 in the morning is not prohibited in a residential area. But there's a lot of sound that is less than that. And are there other ways to do this so that an average person knows what's permitted and not? Because in my experience, there's a general reluctance to call for enforcement of this, but particularly if people aren't sure.
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things that, and Mr. Pendleton's here with me now,
right.
We routinely have weekly meetings, and we're going over how to enforce. And one of the elements of enforcement are regulations, but there are other elements of that. Another part of that is education, and that's one of the things that are, as staff, we're committed to doing PSAs, working with the Public Information Office to get some of those areas out. We have previously taped some things, and I think that's a very good idea to maybe do a short kind of video explaining and showcasing how loud things are and how you can report them. With landscapers, which is really one of the most common complaints that we have. Ernest and I were talking about this today. We don't really have the ability to bring staff in at 5 o'clock in the morning all the time and just drive around. It's just, most of our complaints, the reality is we're complaint driven. Where somebody reports something, we're not going out looking for trouble. But during seasons when we know there's going to be a lot of leaves, the fall or spring for cleanups, we were talking that we would probably shift a couple inspectors to start earlier in those times and go around some of the common neighborhoods where it is, and just alerting people and educating people along the way. So part of that education is something that we certainly want to be able to do. And if we have other ideas, we're certainly willing to begin those conversations. But I agree, educating homeowners about what's allowed noise and what's not allowed noise is something that we should try to do better. It doesn't really translate well from the written text.
Okay, thank you. So why don't we start with Commissioner McComb? Why don't you start, then we'll go to Commissioner Kramer.
Thank you, Commissioner Grimes. Chris, just a general comment. I agree, Mr. Pendleton has been very responsive. I've had several email exchanges this week, and for some reason it seems like there's been a bunch of activity in Ward 9. And I think, just to follow up on Commissioner Grimes' comment, sort of educating people as to what the issues is always helpful. But in looking at the fee schedule for assessments, I want to make sure that you and Mr. Pendleton and staff we're equipping everybody with the tools they need. And $75 seems like it might be a little light. And I've raised this in the past on another sort of regulatory scheme, whether is that enough? I mean, if we're kind of letting people know, generally this is what's, but if his staff is out there, Ms. Roberts is out there, someone is out there on more than one occasion, I think they need to have the tools to send a message that, and I'm not, maybe something more than 75, like maybe 150 or something. If they're not going to do it voluntarily, maybe they have to face a little pain on the prospect of a citation.
I'm going to let Ernest respond because he has a standing item every week with the Township Solicitor regarding penalties and fees.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. As it relates to the fees, The $75 fee is the only fee as of right now that was already in our fee schedule. We are going to relook at it, but that $75 fee was the cost of us going out, doing an inspection, and whatever paperwork we needed to do for one visit. So in the past, we have not been using that reinspection fee. Now we're starting to use it a little more. I'd like to use an admin fee, and that's administrative fee. That's what Chris is talking about. I've been discussing with the solicitor. Most of the codes require us to have a guilty conviction before we can actually fine someone, and that becomes a 2 to 3 month process. So we are trying to find a way to increase our fees, but as of right now, the first step is to use that reinspection fee.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. If you're getting above a certain level, there's probably a due process issue about you have an opportunity to contest it. I guess my only point is that if there's anything that we as a board, I'm just speaking for myself, but I think there may be support by my colleagues to make sure that your time is being used efficiently and we're not getting scofflaws of people who are repeatedly violating something. It's like, nothing's going to happen to me.
Well, yeah, I think we're being a little bit more aggressive as far as setting timelines and actually charging people this admin fee so they see there is some monetary, I don't want to call it punishment, but reaction. And it does help. It's been helping.
Okay.
With respect to fees, Commissioner, the standard in Pennsylvania, you can't use them as punishment.
Right.
And we have to be able to document that our costs are reasonably related to the fee. So.
Yeah, I mean, I understand it. I just, there seem to be some people who don't really, pay attention until there's some big consequence for them, so. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Gilda Kramer.
Thank you. Does this, I actually have two questions related to the noise piece. Does this increase the noise that is permissible from things like air conditioning units, pool pumps, and things like that? Because I can't find it quickly enough, but my recollection is that the decibel levels have been lower in our ordinance in the past, and that there's also been a differentiation between what's permissible during the daytime and what's permissible at night. Is this raising the amount of noise that's permitted? And is this eliminating the differentiation between daytime and nighttime noise?
To answer your question, so the purpose of addressing the noise ordinance is so that it can be applied consistently throughout the township. As it stands right now, we can't apply it consistently because of where you have to take your measurements from. So if you take an area like Ardmore where we still have twins and houses that are close together, a window air conditioning unit, an air conditioning unit averages 60 decibels. That's the average for an air conditioning unit. Some of the older ones are louder, some of the newer ones might be slightly quieter. But if you get into that area, every house that has an air conditioning unit, window, or an air conditioning condenser is in violation of our code. So therefore, I don't want anything in the code. We don't want anything in the code that we can't enforce. We are not going to go out on a 100-degree day and make everyone shut their air conditioners off. So I wanted it to be more in line with what the actual equipment does. Now that being said, over the last couple of weeks, I have gone out through different neighborhoods and we've taken readings. And there are obviously some neighborhoods more quiet than others. So for instance, I did Athens Lane right here. So right behind the church, I think it's 113 Athens Lane. The average decibel level there was almost 72 decibels. And then I was at Old Golf and Potts Lane, where the houses are very far apart and there's no main traffic. The average was 40 decibels. So with our old code, the old code said that if the property background noise was at or equivalent or over the maximum decibel level, they were allowed to go 5 over up to 75 decibels. The new code eliminates that, and it says that you are allowed to go 5, on average, 5 decibels higher than the background. So we're actually lowering it in some areas it's going to be higher, just based on what your background noise is. But overall, it'll fit into the neighborhoods better. instead of like trying to get, like one air conditioner, same air conditioner in Ardmore, which would be illegal, would be completely legal in Gladwin, where the properties are more spread out. So we're trying to equal that out so that the ordinance matches the neighborhood in sense. Now, as far as the mechanical equipment goes, so the maximum for mechanical equipment was 75 decibels. In this code, the maximum is 72. So it's actually, the maximum actually gets lowered, but without that 5 decibel levels over the background noise, there could be some more noise, but the maximum's actually going down, if that makes sense to you.
Yes, and I think it's going to create problems in my neighborhood where you're basically, you know, it's capped at maybe, say, 60 decibels right now during the daytime, and at nighttime it might be 50 or something like that. And now you're saying that at daytime and nighttime it can all be up to 72. And
Correct.
that is going to really create problems.
It's going to really create problems if we have to tell thousands of people in Ardmore and Bryn Mawr that they have to cut off all their air conditioners on a 100-degree night. And I personally don't like doing what they would call selective enforcement, and that's what we're doing right now. We are selectively enforcing parts of the code depending on where they're at, and we can be charged for that. Someone could challenge us in court and be charged. I'll be charged personally because I'm the BCO.
Then I would suggest that you maybe set the levels different depending upon the different zoning, the different, you know, zoning classifications that we have. If we have zoning class, maybe it should be a more differentiated, but increasing the noise level for people in my neighborhood is not going to be a good thing. And that's what you're basically doing. And then the second question I have related to this is that when I read the part about dogs, it says that this is for dogs who are kept outside.
Correct.
So these are outside dogs. So this wouldn't put me in violation if my dog goes out in the evening in the backyard for a few minutes and decides she's going to have a chat with the other neighborhood dogs, because there would be more than 5 barks in 5 minutes. And is that going to be a dog kept outside who is I'm going to get fined because she likes to chat with the neighborhood dogs?
I wouldn't say you're going to get fined because no one gets fined on the first time. We have instances, I think in the code it says after 2. But yeah, 5 minutes of consistent barking would be annoying if it's over the noise. It'd be no different than having a lawnmower running at 9 o'clock at night per se, that's over the noise limit. The dog barking itself wouldn't be over the noise ordinance limit. We would have to take a measurement of your dog barking.
I thought that this is for dogs that are kept outside. She's an indoor dog.
Well, some people leave their
I want to know
dogs.
whether I'm permitted to let her out in my backyard at night if she's going to have a 5-minute chat with the neighborhood dogs.
You are
Or
permitted.
if she's going to howl along with the fire equipment and the other sirens that come along. I mean, I'd
You
like
are,
to know
but
what
I
my
would-
liability is going to be.
I would assume that the same people who have a problem with the noise decibel level going up in your area would have a problem with your dog being outside barking and howling at the moon. That's just my assumption.
No, I think that, you know, it might be for a few minutes. She doesn't stay out
If
there
it's for a few minutes, it's not a
long
violation.
time. But, you know, on the other hand, having pool equipment running all night long at 72 decibels is really kind of high.
I have not found pool equipment that runs at 72 decibels yet.
I'm just saying that if,
I
you
know,
know,
but
if there were such a thing, it would be pretty unpleasant.
Is there anything else, Commissioner?
No, those were my questions about the noise ordinance.
Okay, that being said though, right now, pool equipment can run at 75 decibels.
Okay,
So we're lowering that maximum number.
can we move on?
Sure.
If you don't mind, thank you. I appreciate your enthusiasm with answering the questions.
But
Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Commissioner Grimes. Thank you so much for the answers. I have a couple questions. One you sort of touched on a moment ago. and that has to do with just equipment, mostly at evening, but I could see it if I'm working from home, it could be difficult during the day. If you're looking at gas-powered, outdated, say, generators, not the Genetec ones that are quiet and fancy and landscaped and quiet, how can we account for older equipment that we really ought to think about eliminating or prohibiting at some point? I hate to use the word prohibit, but that are so loud that my phone rings off the hook every time it runs.
I would say the only generators that would be that loud would be the portable generators.
Yes, correct.
And I would not consider those mechanical equipment to the house.
So
they would be in the same area of lawnmower or something like that.
Okay.
I wouldn't consider that. It's not a permanent piece of your mechanical equipment.
Okay, so in that regard, then we would consider that as a part of our sustainability plan where we're, transferring it over to quieter equipment.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. The second thing has to do with noise that may be enumerated here. It's maybe implied, I didn't see it, but a lot of the fancier 5G equipment, it could be Pico, I'm not sure what it is, but there are hums, buzzes. I don't quite know how to describe it. I do have video of it that has been forwarded to me, and I've heard it myself.
Coming from residents or
From
poles?
poles,
We
yeah.
do not regulate any utility companies. They are regulated by the PUC.
No, I get the PUC, but I think we need to spell it out because we have a whole section talking about civil agencies. And we ought to be able to at least draw attention to the fact that these sounds exist. We might not be able to regulate them now, but I think it's important that our residents know that we know the sound exists, even though we have no control over that sound.
We can do that. Chris is saying we can do that. Just to give you guys an idea, I did look up the average decibel sounds of most things, just to give you an idea, because I know the buzzing you're talking about. I have a pole that buzzes near my house, and as annoying as it is not close to being outside the scope of what's allowable by the code.
I think it's more of a pitch issue.
It is,
than
and we
a
don't.
decibel issue.
Unfortunately, we
know
don't
how
regulate that.
I
But
just don't know how we address. We may not regulate it,
Right.
but we ought to be accounting for it in some way.
And we'll look into that. Chris says we can do that. But just to give you guys an idea before we move further, normal conversation, like you and I are having now, is 60 decibels. An air conditioner averages 63 decibels. Taking a shower averages 70 decibels.
If you're not singing.
If you're not singing, and I don't sing, so. So just to give you an idea, a shower is 70 decibels. If you're in the shower, that's what you're hearing. And our maximum in this ordinance is 72. My research and our research of our inspectors find that's a reasonable number.
Okay. Great segue. My very last thing, I promise, Commissioner Grimes, thank you, on the education piece. A couple of years ago, and I think we actually did some work on this. Maybe I missed them, but we all are more comfortable thinking about a decibel, more say than the average resident who's busy doing other things. Is there a way that in our literature we can say, either create video where they can hear what a decibel might be if it's a dog, so that whenever they are kind of self-reporting this, either through a reported app or whatever, that they have some mechanism to see what on earth they're listening to?
I think we'd be better off maybe just supplying a list of some of the average sounds, because if we do a recording, the decibel level is going to be based on what they have the volume on.
And are there any apps that, again, I've heard this, available for purchase from the police department, so they can, again, self-measure?
There are free apps on every Android, every iPhone. I have an app on my phone, which I compared to our actual decibel reader.
Okay.
And they were half a decibel off. So I have an app on my phone that I've used as I go out at night or if I get called out.
In our education, can we give that or something like that as a recommendation for people to download so that we can all be using the same technology to
Absolutely.
enforce? Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Stevenson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes. Thank you, Mr. Pendleton, for your presentation about this. My question is, one is that I brought up before, and this is in relation to religious institutions, and I don't see an exemption clause there for religious institutions, and as far as noise, and why we haven't considered that. And I'll give you my segue of that, is particularly in my ward, we have churches that have transitioned to neighborhoods that are not neighborhood churches are not the neighborhood churches, and historically in gentrified areas, they have made complaints in those areas, and I was just trying to get how we address if there's a complaint about the church piece, and how can we put something there to ensure that we address that.
I think if you look at the exemptions, number 5, it's not in there, but that, we could put churches in there. It does say ceremonies. That would be the category it fits in, with the same exceptions.
I did see that part, but in the exceptions on that, a standing one for, you're saying that it would be a standing to include churches to be exempt for particular uses?
During certain times.
There's certain times in that
Yes.
part. Now, the other piece to that is there also a clause when a church has like a activity, whether it's a holiday or something that goes beyond, like, I think you had 10 or 11, is there a way, can we put a clause where the churches have a way to apply for?
I don't think we would put a clause in. However, they could always approach the building and planning director and get special permission.
A special permit?
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. Yep.
Yeah, 10 or 11 o'clock, which is in the code.
Yep.
Most of the time is reasonable.
No, it is reasonable,
Correct.
but just do like we do with businesses when they ask for special permit.
Yeah, and
to
they
block
could do
up
the
street,
same thing.
those kind of things.
Yes, sir.
All right, so thank you for agreeing to add that in. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Since this is a discussion item, I don't know if we're required to have any public comment, but I will ask if there's anyone from the public who wants to offer any. Seeing none, is there anyone online?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Pendleton.
Yep.
Thank you, Ms. Lessman.
Thank you.
So, although I'm guessing Mr. Lessman's not going very far. The next item on our agenda, which is on page 63, is concerns the authorization to advertise an ordinance for Chapter 155 for the federal firearms licensee.
One more piece to the noise ordinance before we go to the firearms.
Oh, okay. We'll add one more piece.
One more piece. Apologize for that.
He's just gonna scream.
What's that? Can't hear that. That's the issue? No. Well, I thought
They're under 70 decibels, I can't hear them.
Should do the Ace Ventura.
So,
Go ahead.
Yep, I'm sorry. There were 2 pieces on the agenda. One was relating to a zoning amendment. The other is related just to the noise ordinance. I just wanted to clarify the noise ordinance.
Okay.
About 9 months ago, this was before the board, and it's gone through numerous iterations. The noise ordinance really had been bogged down in some of the discussions because there was concern over recreational and sports lighting it was a use. And with the board, when we were here last time, the BMP instructed staff to kind of separate that out, right? Let's treat sports recreation lighting like sports recreation lighting and do the lighting as lighting. So that's what we've done. So now the lighting ordinance is now separated. And so the elements of Chapter 105 will be ready to be able to be brought back to you, much like the noise ordinance. We'll combine them together, we'll bring them back for advertisement, we'll clean them up. At the last meeting, what the board instructed us to do was to take out sports and recreation lighting. We'll do that at another time when we get comfortable with the school district. But the other pieces to this that we cleaned up were we added curfew times for institutional educational uses, and we differentiated between K-12 and post-K-12 with different different curfews for that. We revised a couple definitions of emergency lighting and impervious material. We added a definition of recreational and sports lighting. We also clarified that lighting from parking garages will be shielded and not visible from surrounding properties. And we adjusted the maximum permitted light trespass and luminaire glare ratings. That was things that we discussed. So now we feel that the lighting ordinance is ready to go. There were a little, this ordinance is rather technical. We've had a lot of comments online and coming in from lighting professionals. You'll see a number of edits in here, a lot of technical questions. We really feel that it's really been, it's now in a shape to bring forward. We'll package it all together now with the noise ordinance, and at the next meeting we'll come back and they'll be ready to be, we'll bring those back for advertisement that we can bring forward for adoption. But those were just to report out on that.
Okay.
So,
thank you. And, yeah, go ahead, Commissioner O'Neill. Okay.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for these. Question about historic lighting and historic lighting.
Historic?
So, on historic properties.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, great. So is there any way we can regulate the LED brightness of a light off of a historic property or any property that's designated historic? So for example, so you don't have bright solar blue lights on a home that's 200 years old or a facility that's 200 years old, completely out of place in character.
I'll have to get back to you. I mean, I haven't contemplated that. We've really looked at treating all residential properties or all properties of a similar class equally. Haven't really looked at that instance. Maybe we can have a call up. We can talk about that offline.
I would really appreciate that. I'm noticing it more and more, and it's like the character of history is just almost pushed aside when it comes to lighting outside. And it really does change the whole.
Will be much lower and elements will be shielded.
Right. It can still be energy efficient and everything, and it ought to be. But the colors, I think it's an unintended consequence.
Well, if we can have a conversation offline, if something needs to be done, we can bring that forward before it gets advertised.
I'll add that to our list. Thank you. That's all.
It's an interesting,
Thank you.
interesting thought.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here trying to think about whether the historic code would cover that. I'm not sure, but he'll give us the answer.
This has been one of the more interesting ordinances bringing it forward through the process.
So,
Thank you.
okay. Anyone else on this? All right. Thank you. So now we can move on to, on the lighting? Yeah. Well, okay, if it's on what we just talked about, sure.
I just wanted to completely support.
Would you identify yourself?
My name is Carla Marat. I'm from Marion. I want to completely support what Commissioner O'Neill just said. The quality, the temperature of the night lighting with LED matters tremendously in terms of the whole character, not only of the historic property, but of the neighborhood surrounding it. I think it's a really great point. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, there's no one online with this, is there?
No.
Okay, now we're ready to move on, right? So we're now moving on to discuss discussing the item, which is the authorization to advertise the ordinance for federal firearms licensee. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. This was an ordinance that was discussed by the board a couple months ago. It was brought back. Staff's been working with the Township Solicitor and a subcommittee of commissioners to try to come up through the zoning code with reasonable limitations to the location of federal firearms facilities in the township. Our approach is to define this as a use and then to regulate it. And where we're regulating it is trying to limit it in some of our commercial areas and prohibiting it as a home occupation in all of our residential neighborhoods. We've looked at some other elements. We tried to look at some separation requirements, but it got to be too onerous. Sometimes when you apply too many of these to too many of our commercial areas, in addition to our residential areas and separation requirements, you're effectively excluding it from the entire township, where many of us would like to do that. We don't. From our solicitor, we've been advised that we can't do that. So we're trying to find reasonable regulations to do that. The solicitor has come back and he's added some additional standards to the conditional use process for any of these uses. And he's added those in, they're in your memo to bring forward. We feel that with those additional conditional use standards that have been added and requirements, that this is ready to go. We think that we've defined the issue, we've regulated where it can go, we've put in reasonable standards for the regulation of public health, safety, and welfare for this use as they go forward. Happy to answer any of your questions.
Okay. Questions, comments? I see none. Is there, go ahead, Commissioner Courtney.
I'm sorry if you've already addressed this in your presentation. I just walked in. The idea that home occupations are not commensurate with FFLs, has that been challenged in court yet?
I'm not aware of that. I would have to get back to you on that. I haven't done the legal research on that. I'd want to get with our solicitor on that.
What I recall from our last meeting was that we're choosing this path because it's the only one we could find that remains open to us, but it's not, it hasn't been decided one way or the other. Is that, anybody else?
Well, I mean, I think our solicitor's been very candid that we may be going on new territory. This may be the municipality that is pushing the envelope, and I think that was the will of the subcommittee to do that. And staff and the solicitor have been working to, if we're going to push the envelope, let's be smart about how we push the envelope.
And again, I apologize for being late. Did your presentation include a map that shows where FFLs could exist under this new ordinance?
It doesn't show specifically that map, but I do have a map of, I had a map, but I can explain where they go.
Okay. If you already did, you don't need to re-explain.
No, I didn't. They would be able to go, they would be permitted in the City Avenue District, Rock Hill Road, TC2 is the commercial areas, and also the light industrial area. Those would be the areas where they'd be permitted, which are primarily the non-pedestrian oriented commercial areas. We felt that based on our comprehensive plan that there was a reasonable defense of defending, prohibiting these type of uses in pedestrian oriented commercial areas.
That's it. Thanks.
Okay, so Commissioner Stevenson, you look like you wanted to.
I do.
Please.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the majority of ordinances that address this, it is confined to light industrial?
I don't believe so. I mean, there are a lot of commercial areas that can be. Some uses, say adult entertainment, they can be very easily confined to a light industrial district. Firearms have an extra level of regulation nationally, and they also have an extra layer of regulation in the state of Pennsylvania. They're a different class of use. We just, from our legal advice, we didn't feel that we could just narrowly define them to one district and treat them, say, something like adult entertainment that is sometimes segregated to a city district.
Okay. And help me understand why the village is left out of, that is not considered.
I didn't quite catch that, I'm sorry.
The village area, like, that we zone as villages, why are they left out?
No, they are. So Gladwin Village, Penwyn Village, those are pedestrian-oriented areas. They would not be permitted in those areas. The walkable downtowns that are what you consider a traditional downtown, those are the areas that we feel that we have a reasonable ability to prohibit these uses within.
And why, I guess I don't understand why, I mean, I apologize, I'm belaboring this, but I don't understand why, when you say we feel that this isn't the best, who is we and why do we feel that
The we is township staff working with the township solicitor. So and I've really taken a lot of this advice from the township solicitor. Well, the assumption is that the township does not have the ability to prohibit this use in the township.
I understand that.
We're working off that assumption.
Yep.
So then we're working back off the assumption that we cannot regulate it to the point where we're de facto excluding it from the rest of the township, say just regulating it to 1% of the land area of the township. So we've attempted to come up with a balanced plan that reasonably allocates it in commercial areas where one would normally assume that you could buy these, that you would transact as sort of business along a roadway where people drive to, in and out. Our pedestrian-oriented areas have a different character to them. Those are they're much more closely aligned with residential neighborhoods. There's sometimes more residential activity within those areas. They might be closer to schools. So we felt that those could be reasonably excluded. And so then what was left, I think it's really been a process of what can we take out, but then there is something that's left over. So what's left over are those areas that are purely commercial in nature, auto-oriented, and have a similar character to the light industrial, that are not that, you can't distinguish them. If somebody was to distinguish them, you wouldn't be able to say Rock Hill Road and the light industrial were that different in character.
Great. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner McKeon.
Thank you. I'm going to make a motion and then have some comments after that. So I'd like to move from the packet here to consider for recommendation of the Board of Commissioners authorizing the Township Secretary to advertise a public hearing and notice of intent to adopt an ordinance to amend the Code of the Township of Lower Merion, Chapter 155, entitled Zoning, Article 2, Definitions, Section 155-2.1, Definitions, to create a definition for Federal Firearms Licensee, FFL. Article 5, Uses, to amend Table 5.1, Uses, to permit FFL as a conditional use in the TC2, LI, CAD RCA, CAD BCR, and Rock Hill Road districts. Article 5, Uses, to amend Table 5.1, Uses, to update the table's notes. Article 5, Uses, to amend Table 5.3, Use Regulations, to incorporate the conditional use standards for FFL establishments by this ordinance. And amend Article 10, Supplemental Use Regulations and Nonconformities, to create a new Section 155-10.15, Federal Firearms Licensee, and therein provide for the regulation thereof. Second, Commissioner McComb, thank you. So just some comments that I have. Since I believe September, we've been working as a subcommittee. These are not public meetings. These are meetings that occur during the day. All commissioners have been welcome to attend and can ask many of the questions we've heard here tonight to the subcommittee. At the subcommittee meetings, we have township staff, we have our solicitor, Superintendent McGrath has attended them. We've asked Superintendent McGrath, where are the FFLs? He's advised us where the FFLs are located, what's going on there. So we're able to accumulate a lot of information, and that's what's going on here behind really just to work this up and get something that we think is a legally enforceable ordinance. It's true that in Pennsylvania, possession of firearms is something that we're not here to regulate tonight. That's many of us know. Lower Merion had some issues with that about a decade ago. And even though the word use is used here a lot, this is really about zoning. We're talking about certain districts that can have FFLs, they can have commercial firearm locations. At first, any existing FFLs are currently grandfathered in. There's nothing that would impact them. Going forward, you see the TC2, LI, the CAD, and Rock Hill Road districts will all be areas where firearms are permitted. I live right around the corner from Rock Hill Road. I could take the traditional NIMBY, not in my backyard approach to put them there. I know that we cannot be too restrictive with firearms. So in order to make sure that this thing is successful and that a legal challenge will fail, we've really tried to make sure that we've opened it up and made it so that there are several locations where a firearm seller could go in. One of the other things we've done is we've added in very reasonable conditions of approval. These are things that you may see around banks or pharmaceuticals, places that are storing things that could be stolen. As some of you may know, there was I'm going to read very briefly from a Mainline Times article talking about a ring that was recently broken up about burglars who were going around to gun stores. January 2023, 2 adults, 11 juveniles were arrested for 3 burglaries and an attempted burglary, all for gun stores in Bucks County and Montgomery County. Over 100 firearms were stolen. The detectives said the stolen firearms were quickly distributed and illegally transferred between members of corrupt organizations. All of the burglaries occurred overnight between the hours of 2 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. One of them, around 2 a.m. in Hatboro, was interrupted when an individual heard glass break. One of the detectives who was investigating said approximately 33 of the 93 firearms have been recovered through search warrants and arrest. This leaves 60 firearms illegally transferred and still on the street, endangering the citizens. The sheer number of outstanding firearms creates a clear and present danger to the public and to law enforcement. So when you see the risk of burglary that we can encounter, that's where, in large part, these conditions of approval number 4 through 8 come through, where you're trying to make sure between the hours of 2 and 5 in the morning, a group of people can't come in, take the firearms, and then quickly distribute them and lead to all sorts of trouble in and around Lower Merion. So I was very happy that township staff spent time, our solicitors spent time to look through to see what other facilities like banks and pharmaceuticals do to protect things that can be stolen at night and that could potentially be harmful to the public. So I fully support this. Admittedly, I would have liked to have seen Rock Hill Road excluded. I'm sure I have some constituents who would have liked to have seen Rock Hill Road excluded, but I think for the greater, and some others may want to have see Ardmore excluded. For the greater good, I think it was put together very, very well by staff, and so I support it, and I hope my board members will support it as well, too.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Bernheim.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Grimes. And thank you very much, Commissioner McKeon, for setting that forth. And the only point I just want to emphasize and drop upon is that there was a committee, that was formed in order to go ahead and help do the analysis. And for quite some time, we've recognized that all 14 of us can't be involved in every single aspect that comes before the board, and therefore we've had these ad hoc committees or subcommittees to go ahead and educate the remainder of the board of what their findings are. And this is one of those committees so that the board can be comfortable with a decision and the findings along the lines that Commissioner McKeon has so ably outlined. And as he stated, anybody could be involved who wanted to get their oar in the water for this. And I participated probably more by email than in person on some of these items. But I think that what the committee has come back for, a finding and recommendation, is spot on. That us as a board can adopt that as our overall findings in order to go ahead and to support what is before us. And while I think that there's been great work from our township staff and our township solicitor who has put together an excellent memorandum. The subcommittee for their work, I think, also deserves a lot of credit for bringing forth something so very important to our township. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner McComb.
Thank you, Commissioner Grimes. I'll be very brief because I think Commissioner McKeon very accurately summarized it and had a lot of input into it. But I really think it's important to look at two things. One is the inappropriateness of having an FFL as a home-based business. It really is incompatible, and that's it's not a no-impact home-based business by any means. But second, probably even more significant, is that the proposed conditions really require safekeeping operational standards that are really critical, and I think that's the heart of it, and that is appropriate that for a township or a municipality under its zoning authority to make sure that these things are taking place. So a responsible FFL shouldn't have a problem meeting it, but this is designed to make sure that only those who are able to operate responsibly and lawfully are entitled to do so. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we'll now open this for public comment. If anyone has public comment, you can go over to the podium. We ask that you limit your comments. First of all, you should start by identifying yourself and ask you limit your comments to about 3 minutes.
My name is Carla Marah. I am from Marion. I want to first thank Commissioner McCann and the others who have worked so hard to get something together on this issue that became a major concern out over on the east side, where I live. Secondly, I very much appreciate Commissioner Courtney's comment and request for a map that would designate for everyone's knowledge before this is approved to go forward for advertising where the locations are. I'm not sure that everybody on this, and I have a follow-up question for Chris, I hope he'll answer, about where on City Avenue. He said the City Avenue district, and then I believe he said in the RCA area and the BCA area. I happen to know where those are. I'm not sure that because I was involved back in 2012, before the City Avenue District rezoning was approved. I'm not sure, with all due respect to y'all, that you all know where the RCA and BCA districts are. Where exactly that encompasses and how they relate to residential areas. And my follow-up question for anyone, for any of you commissioners and for Chris, if none of you know, is exactly where on City Avenue? Is it just the limit of the BCA toward the Schuylkill, or does it go further? And I'll tell you why I'm asking that. There, on City Avenue is a street within, I don't know, less than a half block from City. At Old Lancaster, there's a residential area. There's an alley. There's I'll tell some of you know where. I know I'm taking up a little extra time here, but anyway, City Avenue, where it goes past Wendy's at the intersection of Old Lancaster and the Wendy's. Right behind Wendy's, there's an alley, and there are older, actually quite lovely twins with the alley, and their alley is right there. And they're already having problems right on Old Lancaster. I heard this at the MCA last night with armed robberies at 2 locations right on City Avenue, 2 business locations. Anyway, so I hope I've made my questions clear. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Joseph Abramson, BALA, CYNWYD. First, you mentioned that no impact home-based business, and then you state that FFL doesn't qualify, but you don't say how or why. And I asked this last time to Manager McNeely. How many calls or complaints have you received regarding home-based FFLs in the past? And if the answer is none, doesn't that state that the business activity shall be compatible with the residential use of the property and surrounding residential units? We have FFLs that are home-based in Lower Merion, right? It's already there for like maybe 20, 30 years. To say now that it's not, and then you say you don't want to open yourself up to legal challenges, that's a legal challenge. If someone says we have 30 FFLs in Lower Merion operating out of a house, how can you say that it's not compatible with operating out of a house? Then I just want to say that you say you also don't want to put, you want Lower Merion now to push the legal envelope. The last time you pushed the legal envelope, you cost taxpayers over $100,000 in legal fees. And again, this is a solution in search of a problem. And I'll ask, I know the police superintendent's not here, so I'll ask Manager McNeely, how many complaints have you received in total regarding FFLs in Lower Merion? How many times has an FFL been burglarized? How many times has somebody vandalized or tried to get into shot tech, right? The new FFL, the scary one. If it's not a problem, why are we trying to do something? And then at the end, it's trying to say this has no impact on township finances. But you're including the solicitor on all of your committees and all that stuff. How much money have you spent already on this solution in search of a problem? Also, in the proposed conditions, condition number 5, that's illegal under Pennsylvania law. Besides the fact that it just proves how many of you don't know anything about gun laws or guns. And it says here that you cannot sell a rifle or shotgun to anyone under 21 years of age or older. The limit in Pennsylvania is 18 for a rifle or shotgun. You then state that you cannot sell any other firearm if you're less than 18 years of age. The limit is 21 years of age for a handgun in Pennsylvania. So again, and I'm sure Grant's going to ask this, have you reached out to actually someone who knows about firearm laws or firearms? Because it doesn't seem like you did. You're trying to ban something without saying banning, just because people are in an uproar. let it die down, they'll forget about it, then you'll continue on with your life. There's no point, because you are going to be spending money, more money than you have already spent, because you're going to open yourself up to challenges, right? If you say that, oh, it's not compatible, but for the past 30, 40 years, it has been compatible, that's enough of a legal standing to say that you cannot just suddenly say it's not compatible. You know, we could want to maybe virtue signal to say that we don't like it or something. But if you can't do anything about it, and it's not a problem because it's not, then don't do anything about it. You know, it's your job to tell the residents that some of the stuff that they want is not possible, right? We all want to live in a utopia, but we can't. It's your job as the elected representatives to say what is and what's not possible. And this is not possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay.
Hi, my name is Grant Schmidt, and I own ShotTech. We teach people how to shoot and defend themselves using advanced simulation technology. It was a very busy day. We're also hiring. All the background checks went through today, as they normally do, because our clients are awesome. Yeah, what can I say about this? Even just looking at it for just a little bit here, you need to have this thing reviewed by someone who actually understands law related to the Second Amendment. It's readily and easily problematic. Some of the stuff the former speaker mentioned. And yeah, I mean, you even have like a typo here, 4472. You know, there's no 4472, it's a 4473. There's no mention of SB 4113s on here, which we have to submit to the state. There's no mention of the different types of FFLs. Type 3 FFLs are your curio and relic FFLs, your collectors. They are specifically home-based. So you saying FFLs are not compatible with a home-based business is really antithetical. We have a number of clients who are type 3 FFLs. I understand I'm speaking on their behalf because they're very private. And one of the reasons they're private is because they used to be public. And when you take a home-based business and you force them to be public, it puts them at risk of exactly the kind of thing that you're trying to prevent. Right, so we're a business, we exceed all storage requirements. We actually lock up all of our stuff in multiple ways. We take all advice from the National Shooting Sports Foundation and the ATF, and we exceed it. I have offered repeatedly that if anyone from Lower Merion Police Department wants to come in and advise on ways that we can continue to exceed those standards, I will continue to make that offer. No one has yet taken me up on that offer. You have what I estimate is at least a dozen type 3 FFL. We're type 7. Again, it makes no mention of the various types. So type 3s in our area, and we usually advise them like on cool stuff that we got coming in at auction and things like that online, because they're VIPs. So you're running really afoul of them. And if you force them to be public in any way, you are putting them at risk. And so that's a problem. So you're putting them at risk, exactly the kind of thing that you're trying to prevent that has never happened. So anybody who wants to reach out to me about like all the specific languages and things like this, I would encourage you to also reach out to Firearms Owners Against Crime, FOAC, and a number of 2A organizations. I would say it'd be better to preemptively reach out to them than get slapped with a lawsuit by them. Because I have reached out to them and they're excited. Obviously they have to wait till like final language and stuff, but if it's truly a good faith endeavor, reach out to me, reach out to the various groups that you're going to be in contact with anyway, intimately. We have some of the biggest Second Amendment attorneys residing in Lower Merion Township. And you met them before, and so you don't want to meet them again. So that's all I'll say on this matter at this time, and seemingly I would be cool with this because you're going to give my business a monopoly. So as much as any business would like to have a government-sanctioned monopoly, it's wrong-headed. Oh, and last thing I'll mention is there's a phenomenon I've noticed in the township where we get calls from residents who say something to the effect of, I just inherited a firearm or bought a gun or was given a gun from, let's say, my brother, right? And they say, now I need to register it. and then we have to advise that person that they essentially broke the law, and that's not how PA firearms law works. And they go, well, I'm just, I'm a wealthy guy, I'm on the right side of the law, et cetera, and we're like, yeah, this is why we do what we do. You're supposed to come in here with the person that is giving you said gun. We do the paperwork, we do the background check, and then you can take legal possession of it. You can't take legal possession of it and then post facto do background check and paperwork and such. So, that's just one of the services we provide. FFLs, we run background checks. Reach out to me. We're by appointment only. You can always give us a call or text or email, and I look forward to being in contact if it's truly a good faith endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, anyone online?
No, we don't have any attendees online at this point.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table that's been seconded. I'll just give an opportunity if anyone wants to respond to public comment or say anything else real quick. Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you. Just quickly to say that I believe that it is important for our subcommittees, and this has been a great one. I appreciate the work that the committee has done, and I myself have found myself, while I'm heading a committee, to forget to reach out to the businesses and for economic development. We're making broad, reform-oriented policy and forgetting to reach out to those who know it best. And whether it's an issue of an FFL or an issue of a bag ordinance at a grocery store and not referring to the grocery store for, buy-in, we really have to be careful about regulating and not checking with those organizations who are about to be regulated. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Courtney.
Thank you, Commissioner Grimes. I think it's inevitable we're going to get a legal challenge on this. And so I appreciate all of the work done by the subcommittee. I certainly didn't participate, and so you guys, I will defer to you and your expertise here, but I think I will support this tonight, but I have reservations, and I think we should make sure that it's, I want to say bulletproof, but that feels dumb. We should make sure we've addressed all of the concerns raised by these people who clearly know more about firearms than I do. And I think if we accept the fact that we're going to have a legal challenge, why don't we go further? Why don't we try for a real, what we actually want is to put this in the LI, I think. I think that's the place where this belongs. The fact that the LI only represents 1% of the township isn't really our fault. I fear that there will be adverse consequences if this goes through. The reason this is before us is because an FFL moved into one of our retail areas and became highly visible. And what this ordinance is going to do is going to take businesses that are mostly invisible, that most of us were unaware of, that most of the township is unaware of, and force them to become visible. It's going to force them into retail areas. It might reduce the number of them because of the cost of opening a retail establishment, but I fear that if what we want is to protect our commercial areas and to reduce the possibility of gun violence in Lower Merion, we're not actually going to accomplish that here. But I will vote to advertise tonight because I think it's worth pursuing this in the hopes that we will find something better.
Thank you. So let me just say, I think your comments are well taken. I'll just speak for myself here. I don't think this is going to reduce gun violence in this township by any means. But having said that, what we've been asked for by residents is to explore ways to move future FFLs into areas that aren't pedestrian friendly and aren't residential. And that's what we're doing. So I would hope, there's certainly the last time we discussed this, there was a healthy contingent of people who were asking us to do more than probably what we're even proposing now. But I hope people don't have an illusion that this is going to impact the number of people carrying guns in this township. But having said that, I think your points are well taken. So if Vice President Gavin, go
Thank
ahead.
you. I'm along the lines of Commissioner Courtney. I'm a little concerned that our solicitor's not here to address a lot of these comments that were raised. I don't know what's right, what's wrong, you know, what's valid, what's not. So I struggle with this because of those comments being raised and our solicitor not being here to respond. So I don't feel comfortable at this point recommending it. I think I will abstain because I just don't feel like I have enough information at this point, so.
Thank you. So this is where I remind, I know my fellow commissioners know this, but remind members of the public, we are only voting tonight to advertise this ordinance. There can be changes made. There certainly is opportunity for additional legal input on this if we approve this tonight. Obviously, if we don't approve it, then we're not going to advertise it. But that's what we're talking about tonight, and if we move forward, there will be public hearings as well. So, Commissioner McKee.
Yeah, just very briefly, to address the issue about where's the phantom solicitor tonight. We met as a subcommittee with the solicitors, and this thing was basically greenlit as it would pass. On December 6, 2022, Gil High was included in our group, and so was Matt Hovey. We met again on February 2nd, 2023. Matt Hovey was there. It was just Matt Hovey. And then February 21st, 2023. Matt Hovey was there for that as well. So those are 3 meetings in the last 3 months alone with our subcommittee that included the solicitor. So that was the process that we had. And I got the impression it was basically that, you know, it was sort of a done deal to bring it out here. The solicitor wouldn't need to be here tonight because, you know, everything. And I understand that the other commissioners did not have the benefit of being in the subcommittee to bounce questions off the solicitor. So it would have been better, in my opinion, for the solicitor to be here. But I just say that I think the solicitor was very comfortable with the ordinance as we've got it through the subcommittee.
Thank you. And that's what I would expect that, you know, one of the reasons we have public comment is to get public input. And Mr. Abramson and Mr. Schmidt have raised some issues tonight. And to the extent the solicitor deems it's appropriate to look into them, I would expect that would happen. So anyone else? Seeing none, let's vote. This is again on the motion to advertise. All those in favor, please raise your hand signifying aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 10 in favor. Opposed? 1 opposed, abstentions, and 1 abstention. So the motion carries. Thank you, and that concludes the business of building and planning tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner Grimes, and that also concludes the business of our Board of Commissioners for the evening. We are adjourned.